Hello, Janksters, and welcome to another episode of the MagicJank podcast, the show where members of Team MagicJank get together and talk about the latest happenings in Magic the Gathering. So we got a good show for you here, I think. We got some fun stuff to talk about. At this point, Wilds of Eldraine has been out on Arena for almost a week now, not quite, and not quite a full week, but we're already seeing an impact, which is pretty promising for the future of the format. So, my name's Graham, I go by Hamhawks42, and I am joined by the ones and only C. Ferreira Jr., aka Carlo, although aka should probably go in the other direction, but C. Ferreira Jr., and then we also have HollywoodPizza in the house. So, gentlemen, let's start. Carlo, how you doing, my friend? Welcome.
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Excellent. And Pizza, what up, man? How you doing?
Doing pretty fantastic. Been enjoying the Wilds of Eldraine. Pretty excited to be back on Eldraine. And yeah, kind of just, I don't know why, but set kind of reminds me of Kamigawa, where when it came out, I got really, really excited about Magic. And yeah, just been really excited about it.
I like that. That's cool, and I'm inclined to agree. I feel like this set has a lot of really cool stuff in it. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to diving into it. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show, I do want to give a huge shout out and a huge thank you to the namesake for this MagicJank.com, the online retailer where you can buy and sell Magic the Gathering products and gear. Also, the merchandise for all the streamers that are part of Team MagicJank, which is more than just the three of us. There are actually quite a few members who are just, honestly, in my opinion, okay, I'm like super biased, but some of the best like Magic Twitch streamers out there right now are part of this team. Just putting it out there. And these fine gentlemen who are with me are absolutely amongst them. So if you want to get, their logos, my logo on like coffee mugs, t-shirts, mouse pads, that kind of jazz, check it out over at MagicJank.com. We'd love to see you over there. So again, huge thank you to MagicJank for making it possible. So the first topic that I want to touch on today is actually a pretty somber one. This past week, and the reason that I wanted to touch on it, we don't talk a lot about Commander necessarily on this show. It's rarely kind of the focus, although we all do play it. And as a result, I feel like this is important. An impactful event happened this past week, and in that Sheldon Menery, unfortunately, after a multi-year battle with cancer, ended up passing away. And if you don't know who Sheldon Menery was, really what it comes down to is he is possibly one of the most influential figures in Magic who we had with us. He is credited as one of the creators of the Commander format. He was a level 5 judge, and Elder Dragon Highlander, EDH, as it's known, was actually started by Sheldon and a group of, other fellow judges who created kind of a fun variant of the game to play after the tournament was over. So they would do the competitive Magic all day, and they'd officiate on it, and then to unwind, they would play this kind of goofy format where you could play just about anything, and it encapsulated the fun that you can find in Magic so much and so well through a couple of very simple rules changes that it ultimately became the format that we know as Commander, which today is possibly the single most popular way to play Magic. Sheldon is responsible for that. And on top of that, he was a level 5 judge and did a ton for the judge community prior to founding Commander as we know it today. And he was on the Commander Rules Committee up until the day he died. So as a Magic fan, as somebody who loves janky brews and being able to do creative, fun things with Magic cards, I know personally that one hit hard. Like that one hurts. And so I just want to say, Sheldon, you will be missed. And yeah, thank you for everything that you did. So I don't know if you guys had any thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, I've been playing Commander for quite a long time, and definitely was a way for, friends of mine to get together to just jam some chill Commander. We weren't playing like for competitive tournaments, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And, I think this is why I always stick by like the original deck I've ever played in Commander has always been my Planeswalker deck. Granted, over the years, the Commander may have changed when we've gotten sort of better suited commanders for it, but I think it's a testament because I think, many Commander players always have like that OG deck. Like this is the deck I've always had forever. And that definitely is true in Sheldon's spirit, right? I mean, Sheldon did have his Commander deck that he always altered and he always played. So definitely leaving behind that sort of legacy for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really sad that we lost essentially like one of the biggest people I think in Magic, especially where we realize where Magic's at today, where Commander is actually the most popular way for everybody to play. And we can only think about where Magic would be if it wasn't for Commander. So, big blow I think to the community. And for me, I think for us, all of us, the best way to celebrate it is the way that they would have wanted, is for us to keep going and play some games in their memory. Remember all the good times we had with them, remember all the good times that we all still have together, and how important the game is. It's beyond people, it's beyond Commander, it's it's so important to so many of our lives, and it really keeps like a lot of us going in such an important way. And I think that that's something that's we all easily forget. And really big shouts to the community for just all the positivity that we've seen online, all the support from everybody kind of getting together and celebrating Sheldon's life, and kind of realizing the impact that they've had on the community and all of our lives in general, whether or not we had like direct contact with them or not. They definitely, without them, like I said, I don't know where MTG would be, because Commander is one of the most important things to Magic right now, if not the most important thing. And losing someone that really made the format and really kept Magic at its peak here is really sad. But it's a lot of positivity to still take away from it. Like I said, celebrate his life. And when you play your games, I know there's a lot of disagreement about Commander in general, from the base fundamental levels to the competitive scene as well. But I think overall, just have fun with the game, have fun with the people that you're playing with, and really appreciate those moments in time, because we don't know when we're going to have another one of those moments with the people that we love and our friends. And I think that's the number one message that I think everybody should take with this sudden and unfortunate loss to our community.
Yeah. Well, and that's an important takeaway. Kind of one thing that I know I am very much aware of. In Philadelphia, MagicCon Philadelphia, there was one point I'd just gotten done with a game, and we were kind of packing up. It was near the end of the day. And I found myself kind of in this little group of people, and Sheldon was like maybe 6-7 feet away from me at one point. And I had a moment of just like, holy crap, that's Sheldon Menery. And at that time, which is crazy to think about, because that was only 5 months ago, or like 5-6 months ago, and he looked healthy. He was dressed well. Like I had no idea that he was sick, none whatsoever. You would never know by looking at him. And I had this thought of like, I should go shake his hand and just thank him for what he's done, for making this possible. Because I was just getting done with a Commander game with some friends who I'd met online, who I got to meet in person for the very first time. Like, it was a very special weekend for me, and this is an opportunity to just say thank you to somebody who laid the foundation that made it possible. And I chose not to, because I was feeling a little self-conscious, and I thought, well, you know what? It's okay. I'll catch him at another event. I'll have another chance. And that never happened. And so that's a regret of mine. And that's something I'm going to think about for a while. And I just want to put that out there. If you have an opportunity to say thank you to somebody who has made a positive impact in your life, don't pass on that. That is valuable. So, dear viewer, dear listener, don't worry, we'll get to the fun stuff. We'll get to the fun stuff. But I just want to put that out there, because you never know. And you never know, maybe that person needs to hear it too, because they may not know how much they've impacted you. I think Sheldon understood that he's left a legacy that has touched millions of people. I think he knew that. I hope he knew that. Because he did. So, again, on that somber note, let's get back to some fun stuff. So, Wilds of Eldraine is a set that has recently come out. This last Tuesday, it dropped on Arena. And we've seen some early results in Standard. People are picking the new cards up, which does not always happen. So, yeah, I think it's of note. So now, what I expected to see with the Standard Meta game coming out of this new set, because rotation did not occur, I was expecting nothing to change on Arena for at least 2 to 3 weeks, and then ultimately see 1 or 2 cards get adopted into existing shells. That's what I was expecting to see, because that's what we've seen with other sets, you know, when there hasn't been a rotation or anything to shake it up. And that doesn't, I mean, we do see some decks that are still top of the heap that haven't changed. And part of that is people don't have the wild cards like right away or don't acquire them, so that's understandable. But we have seen one new archetype pop up in getting decent metagame share on the ladder that, like, I don't know about you guys, but, like, I was hopeful that it would show up. I certainly didn't expect to see it this early, though. And that is a Golgari mid-range list. It's here. We have the Rock back in Standard. Is this for real, or is this a flash in the pan while people are trying the new cards? What do you guys think?
It's exciting.
Right? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's pretty cool seeing. I mean, honestly, not much else has like really changed. I'm glad though that we got at least a deck so far, considering that there wasn't a rotation. But I think that so far the Gary mid-range deck can definitely hang with the top tier decks, and obviously it has a lot to do with the new cards that they added, which a lot of them are all like 2-for-1 type effects. Draw some additional cards. Give you like a good rate on body for the mana cost, things like that. But I think obviously we're definitely seeing the impact in a rotation where, once again, the decks that exist obviously still exist. And I can also say that a lot of that has to do with the way Arena works. People, you know, the wildcard system means that more than likely everyone's just going to keep the new decks they have. No one's really going to brew, because as we know, you spend like 20 wildcards on a deck or even more. And if the deck's terrible, then it feels really, really bad on your collection, where now you have all these cards that are probably not really going to do anything unless you play a lot of Historic Brawl, I guess. But
yep. I don't know. I didn't spend 4 mythic wild cards on Jace Cunning Castaway. I don't know what you're talking about. Hey, but I got a really beautifully underperforming YouTube video out of it, so that was worth it. Anyway,
I think,
but yeah, I get what you're saying. When you see rares and mythics that are kind of these goofy builder rounds, like, you're not going to spend your wild cards on those if they're not going to help you, you know, win games. So yeah, I get what you're saying.
I think like putting stuff, having the multi-deck ability, kind of like Modern, I always touch on, because like, you know, Modern's an expensive format, but I mean, if you slowly buy into all the lands, then you can probably play any deck you want, because a lot of Modern's expense comes from the fetch lands and shock lands. So once you get those, there's only probably like 10 mythics that really costs like between $50 to $100, maybe even less than that. And at that point, you're not really like too far off from the rest of the deck, considering it's still going to have some commons and uncommons in it. And I think that that's something that, you know, obviously arena crafters out there have to keep in mind when new sets come out. You know, you always want to make sure that you can craft your lands, because lands go in any deck. But after lands, I think that it's important to kind of utilize what you think is going to get played in a lot of different decks, and then maybe you can focus on what you think is probably something fun that you think you want to play. And if you're mostly trying to grind your dailies or do the arena opens, which is something we're going to touch on a little bit later, even though that's going to be a sealed format this time.
This one, yeah, that's one is. Yeah.
Overall, I think that it's cool that we got one new deck, at least for Eldraine. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of the same meta. I think that at this Sunday's Pizza Box Open, I'm making a prediction of seeing 8 different decks again, like we usually do. And we're going to at least see 3 new decks in the top 8. We're not just going to see one. Ooh. I expect to see 3 new decks from probably really good players that are regulars that we see all the time whenever a new set comes out. And they know what the new hot deck to play is, and they play it, and they do good with it in the opens. And I'm making the bold prediction of at least seeing 3 new decks. I'm not saying they're going to win. Because obviously, you know, Dimir is still a really good deck, and so are some other good decks like Domain. Red Deck Wins is making a resurgence because, you know, obviously when the format's volatile, Red deck wins likes to, chomp on the decks that like to stumble early. But overall, I'm expecting some new decks. Don't forget, that's free to play. There's going to be a link in the description down below.
Absolutely.
And if you top 8, you also qualify for the Jankathon, $2,500 on the line to top 8, plus prizes all the way through to top 16. So definitely get in on that this Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about new decks and new cards, so you're thinking we're going to see at least 3. I'm just curious, do you have any predictions as to what those might be?
Yes, I actually do.
Yeah, no, then please
so
let us
we're
know.
obviously going to see the Golgari deck that we know about. That's probably going to be there.
Yep.
We're also going to see a Fairies deck. I'm definitely expecting to see Fairies show up. People try it out. It's another Dimir deck. I expect it to do good. And I'm also expecting some type of green-based strategy. Potentially like a Simic ramp deck that I made a video on my YouTube channel. Or maybe even maybe a different type of control deck. Kind of popping up, considering that there's like some new control cards in the format, like the End. I also expect to see new iterations on Black with Beseech the Mirror, and also cards like Razor Lash Transmogrant making a comeback, where you can actually bargain it. That and the Iron Crag you can bargain right away. So I think that between those cards and some other elements of the deck and some new elements from Eldraine, I expect Mono Black to be different as well. And in all honesty, who knows? Maybe we can even see a return to Grixis, considering that Beseech the Mirror can kind of be like a Invoke Despair type card where you can just find the answer you need at that big slot. Carlo's like,
don't tell them that.
Don't bring it back. What do you think, Carlo?
Listen, I have had a blast playing Eldraine Standard so far. As you know, I mostly play viewer decks all the time, and so when we were doing this for early access, there were lots of clear players that could stand out in this format. And I think that's a huge reason why the Golgari decks have been popping up. Previous to Wilds of Eldraine, I was on the Dimir train weeks before, and we knew that Dimir was going to be a big player. And so before Wilds of Eldraine, I actually started testing a Golgari deck that's much different than the one that is on the ladder. And that is more of a ramp-based strategy. And so in testing that deck previous to Wilds of Eldraine, I knew I wanted the payoff card to be Tyrannix Rex. I think this card is incredibly underplayed in the standard format for many reasons. Number one, white has lots of wrath spells, so Tyrannix Rex doesn't really like getting wrath spells played against it, especially if it's Sunfall. But if you can ramp into this card early enough and cause your opponent to respond, they're not being able to respond to the second Tyrannix Rex. So let's get that straight. But we have some great new tools in this new standard format that let you cast this Tyrannix Rex. And I'm not just talking Armored Scrap Gorger. We don't need to play that card anymore. You can straight up play Bramble Familiar. Bramble Familiar is the new hotness. The 2-mana taps for a green card, right? But there's another half to that card. That says that you can mill 7 cards, return a creature, enchantment, or non-land or land card from amongst them and put them on the battlefield. Guess what finds Tyrannix Rex for 7 mana while it's in your hand? Bramble Familiar does. But in the event that you don't find that card, Virtue of Persistence also costs 7 mana. And you can grab that off of that card, and it's an enchantment, and it's a removal spell. So,
and it plays real well, right? With the Bramble, you can discard a card to reanimate later.
It's
and
great.
Then bounce it back to your hand.
Exactly.
And with Bramble Familiar's Fetch Quest, if you mill 7 cards and the T-Rex isn't among them, but the Virtual Persistence is, well, okay, you're teed up for your upkeep. It's a little slower than what you planned, but it'll get you there. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of 7 mana cards, hello, Breach the Multiverse is still around. And if you thought that card was a slot machine before, it's definitely much more of a slot machine now. So, we still get to play amazing Golgari cards in this deck, like Glissa Sunslayer. Let's talk about a card that doesn't die to cut down, since Standard extended its rotation, and we still have to deal with that card. Doesn't die to that card. But another great card, of course, to either remove counters off of your Invasion of Zendikar that's going to ramp you, or that is just straight up going to draw you a card, lose a life. And of course, we get to play Shieldred, because who doesn't like playing Shieldred in this Standard? All of these cards can be played in exactly the same deck. and be a real powerhouse. So for the pizza box next Sunday, I will be queuing up this Golgari ramp deck 100%. So good luck, gamers.
I think they're going to need it against this thing. This looks nasty.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I love it too because, I mean, Glissa specifically is one of those cards where you read it and it's just, this is pure upside. This is a 3-drop. This thing is nasty. But it just never had a home because green just didn't quite have the juice. Like, it just didn't quite come together. And so the fact that we now have a deck that's leveraging both green and black, all of a sudden, like, this is just one example of a card that becomes incredibly powerful. Kind of like, you know, she's been in Standard for a while. There's just never been a good enough reason to play her. Because the reality is the decks that would have been able to take really good advantage of Glissa already had like Graveyard Trespasser and they didn't need green for anything else. So it didn't really make sense to splash green just for Glissa. But now, well, you know, there's no splash involved. So get her in there. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to check out the full deck list of what I'm telling you right now, Hamhawks has our links in the description below. If you go to my link tree, my Untapped profile page is there, so you can check out the full deck list. The other place that you will be able to find this after you listen to the rest of this podcast today is on the MagicJank Discord server. So one of the places you can find that is in the description below. So make sure you check that out.
Click on the things. They're in there. Awesome. Perfect. And actually, while you're in the Discord server, you can also ask us questions directly. Just putting that out there. So if you have topics that you want to discuss on the podcast, that's a great place to do it. Yeah. So no, this looks fantastic, and I love the fact that and T-Rex, actually, now that I think about it, another phenomenal card that just didn't have a home before, but now totally does. Yeah, I'm enamored with this deck. Honestly, I'm just so stoked this exists. Yeah, so I'm curious. So, Pizza, you mentioned there were a couple of other decks that you suspect could be players that currently, you know, they might be surprises to some folks. I'm curious, what else are you thinking we might see?
Just the fairies deck. I think is going to be huge. I think that I haven't looked at the list yet, at least like besides what I've seen online, but I probably feel like they're building it wrong. If they're not having as much as like a high win rate, because I can tell you right now that deck stomped me in early access, and I don't lose that bad ever to that many decks. But I definitely think between the new 1-drop fairy and the Thoughtseize, I think that deck's going to be like really hard to beat going forward. Mana Leak, Spell Stutter, whatever as well. I also think like there's a lot of new cards like the Lightning Helix creature, the new Bone Crusher, whatever you want to call it, Heart Flame or Heartfire.
Heartfire Duelist.
Yeah, the Duelist. Yeah, that card I think is going to be really, really good as well with like Pia. I think all the adventures are going to get played. I think there's definitely probably going to be an adventure deck. I don't know if it's going to make top 8 yet. It might, but I think that deck's going to be harder to build than the other decks. Like the Fairies deck is like the Rogues deck. It kind of builds itself in a way. You just have to make sure that you build it the right way. Whereas like the Adventure deck is going to be harder to build because you're going to need to find a balance between like how many I forget what the card's name is, but the 3-mana 4/4 giant. How many of those cards are going to play to kind of like utilize Seek Thrills, I think is the name of the instant speed side of the adventure side of it, where you can look at your top 7 cards or something and grab as many adventures into your hand. I also think Otter. Yeah, Otter is another card that obviously can make that deck kind of go. And we could also maybe even see like a Prowess deck with Swift Spear, with Otter, with a lot of these cards that we're seeing. Sorry if my volume was a little bit low there for a second, but we can kind of see all these cards kind of make a big push in making some new archetypes here in the format. And I really expect people to be brewing right now on Arena. I just expect people to kind of be playing a lot of the same decks that we've seen, because like I said, wild cards are a thing, so we don't always see the decks in the first week on Arena, but we start to see them later on and kind of see the format develop. I mean, Dimir is a deck that literally showed up on Arena because of Carlo like 2 weeks before the format was about to change, and it became the best deck. So
yeah, that was
you never know when the best deck's gonna pop up.
Yeah, that was one of those. I remember Carlo, you saying that Dimir was good, and I'm just like, well, yeah, it's blue and black, of course it's good. Then it ends up being like the best. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's
Who knew?
Yeah, you were on something there. Yeah. Well, and speaking of being onto something, I gotta say, I think with looking into our previews, I feel pretty vindicated about a couple of things, and I know I definitely need to eat some crow on at least one of my predictions, and I'm gonna do just that. But we have the Elusive Otter up on screen right now. I have not played as much Standard as I normally would like to, like the right after a set drops this past week, but I played some. And in the handful of games that I played on Arena, I found the Elusive Otter. Like, I went up against the Elusive Otter a couple of times. People are brewing with this thing, and holy crap, when you can get 4 or 5 counters on this thing, like, it feels like you're cheating, because, like, your opponent just can't block it, and it's just... And it's a 1-drop, and it's absolutely smash in face. I honestly think this card is the real deal, and I'm glad to see people are experimenting with it. And it's really cool to see. And I've gotten stomped by it a couple of times, and it's like, it's so adorable, I can't be mad. That said, speaking of 1-drops, though, there's a card that Hollywood you mentioned that I said was absolute just trash. I thought it was absolute doo-doo garbage, and I could not have been wrong, or more wrong rather. And that is in the Sleep Curse Fairy. I've played with this card a little bit since Eldraine dropped in a couple of like tempo decks or like some controlling decks. It is nuts. The fact that the fact that you don't deal damage for the first couple of turns is not that big a deal, really. Like,
it needs to turn on your cards. The most important part of this card is it costs 1 mana. It can't be cut down. And even if they wanted to cut down, the card has Ward 2. So they're not killing this till turn 4 realistically in Standard, right?
No.
That's about as far as it goes. Like, the best removals are like Go for the Throat.
I mean,
and on top of that, it's a beating.
Brotherhood's End is about the only thing that is able to hit this like
Control
at a
beats you
decent
with the
time
hand sandwich most of the time, right? Like, they just literally, they're just like, oh, end step, make a 6/6 shark, I guess. Oh, lol. I guess the game's over because I'm just going to hit you twice and you're going to concede. And Sleep Curse Fairy is kind of like that, where it starts earlier and all of a sudden, like, yeah, you're getting beat down, but then you kind of like can come back into it. And yeah, I definitely expect this card to be a big player. Like I said, I think that right now the Fairies decks are being built wrong, incorrectly. And I think that eventually we're going to see them built a lot better. And overall right now, I think this card is going to be the Rafina of the set, where everyone discounts it, and then a month in, you're like, oh, I hate this card. When they curve out, oh, it's like the worst thing ever.
We're all going to be sick of seeing this thing in short order. Because, like, you throw this down, if you have Spell Stutter in your hand, and also just with how it lines up with the current Standard meta, half the time, if you're on the play, you already won if you got this in your hand. It's stupid. But, like, you throw this down, they play their Triome, pass it back to you, you now have 2 open mana, and maybe a Spell Stutter in your hand that is now a mana leak because this fairy is on the battlefield. I mean, and then the best part, my favorite part of this whole card, if they don't play into your counter spell on their end step, you would just put 2 mana into this and remove one of the stun counters. It's so
card's
good.
a beating, man. It's just a 1 mana 3/3.
The opponent's attacker. Also, let's talk about another card that doesn't die to cut down.
Right? Exactly. It's nuts. No, and this thing being a 3/3 and having the Ward 2, like, this thing doesn't die to cut down twice. I love it. Oh, anyway. Now, I'm curious. You mentioned that you think people are building the Fairies deck wrong. There is a card that I've seen in some people's Fairy builds, and I've seen some people avoid it. And I definitely want to get both of your guys' takes on this. And that is Talion the Kindly Lord. Do you think this has what it takes in Standard specifically?
No, I think this is like a commander card. I think not in the Shieldred's world. This card's unplayable with Shieldred. I think that Shieldred is way better. Shieldred, literally, when it comes into play, I just don't even need to name a number and my opponent loses 2 life every turn.
Well, but comparing anything to Shieldred is not fair.
Well, but that's what we got to compare it to, though. That's I think where anytime any 4-drop comes in, 4-drop is the most powerful spot in Standard always. And I think that we really do need to compare it to Shieldred, because in 1 year, that Shieldred's going to rotate. Will that make this card better? Probably not. Another 4-drop might come in by the time that this card's maybe even playable. It's also a lot harder for you to like name a mana cost, because this isn't like Modern where someone's whole deck can be built around 1 mana cost. In Standard, people are going to be wanting to curve out, and I think that because of that reason, because of the different mana costs, like what do you name against ramp?
Well, it's not just mana cost. It's also power and toughness.
Yeah, I mean, that's even harder, right? Like
No,
that's
it just
even
gives you
harder.
it
Like for
just
me,
gives
I
you
think
extra hits.
I don't know. I think it's even harder. I personally don't really like the card. I think that it's really good in Commander, and other than that, it doesn't have flash. It's just I think this card's really awkward if you're playing your fairy deck. Don't get me wrong, the one drop doesn't have flash, but it also costs 1 mana, so you can keep up any other spell or
Right.
cast multiple spells in a turn. I think if you're playing this, you're kind of like asking to get blown out by like whatever your opponent plays next. And I think that it's going to be really hard to name the right thing to get the most value out of it. We've seen a card that costs 2 mana that does something very similar to this in the past. The card from Strixhaven. It's 1 white, 1 black. I think it was like a 3/2. I don't remember what it was called. But you name the card,
Oh,
and
the
if they
silver
played it,
quill.
yeah,
I
it's
want to say
similar
adept,
to
but I don't think
this.
that's right. Yeah.
I just don't. I personally, I
That one you
opened
had to
two of
pick a
these in a
card
booster
name though,
pack,
I
and I just
believe.
was like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
I just like immediately traded it because I was like, I don't. I think it's a good card too. I actually think that it's obviously anytime a card says draw a card, there's a chance. But
Mm-hmm.
personally, I think until Shieldred leaves and maybe even some other cards that are around like the 4 mana slot, I honestly don't really see this card getting played that much. I think it's just okay. What do you think, Carlo?
I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of hate it.
in
Sorry.
terms of the like a Demir deck, I don't think it's playable because there are better options. If you're trying to stick to a fairy themed deck, I'm pretty sure the card just slots right in because it makes your pro fairy cards better, like your fairy fencing and your spell stutter. They all get better with this card. You get to play the Thoughtseize at Home, the ego card when you're
Mm-hmm.
playing this in that type of a deck. I think those are two distinct, different archetypes. Um, Not saying one is necessarily better than the other. Obviously, if you're taking a look at what's competing for that 4 mana drop slot in a black X deck, the answer is Shieldred.
Sure.
So I think we're just in a position where you have Shieldred that just pushes other possibly played 4 drop cards out of the format, which has always been traditional in Standard. Something else exists or something else can't fly until one rotates out. But now we are in a different scenario. And this brings me back to conversations we've had for many weeks now,
Yep.
which is that Standard should have just rotated as usual. But, they didn't take Wilds of Eldraine into consideration.
Right.
Or rather, the format was going to be regular, like it would have rotated. And this set was created with that assumption. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, Shieldred still would have been in the Standard format, so we still would have sort of run into this issue.
Yeah.
But
now we get to run into that issue until 2025.
Let's go.
Yeah, I personally would still rather play Shieldred in my fairy deck over this card. I think this is like a 1 or 2 of at most. I just feel like at 4 mana, if I'm like tapping out, feeling real confident, I'm gonna want to play Shieldred instead. Like this card just and I also don't think that the fairy deck should be playing cards that are more than like 2 or 3 mana probably.
That's also fair.
And honestly, that's like my biggest kind of like grievance with the card.
Mm-hmm.
I think once again, if I'm playing 4, Shieldred's as far as I go. In all honesty, I know I keep killing the being a dead horse here, but I really think with that card being around, it's going to be hard for cards like Talion, which is more of like an RNG card. This card my biggest problem with the card is it's not a guarantee. Like this card's only good when they're at like 6 life, and at 6 life, anything can kill them. Mm-hmm. Right? Any 3-4 flyers,
and presumably you have a board full of little flyers already. That's if your deck is doing the thing. Yeah. So I get what you're saying. This is one of those cards that like I've tried playing with it, and when I play it, I name 4, think I'm a genius. My opponent plays 5 spells and never triggers it, and I'm super pissed. But when my opponent plays it, they name 2, and I'm staring at a hand with 6 cards in it, all of which either have 2 mana value or or power or toughness.
It's a skill card. I think
so it's just one of those
meddling mage, right? Like it's a card where some days you play meddling mage and you name lightning bolt and your opponent loses the game. Some days you name lightning bolt and they literally never cast another one. Right. You have to block with your meddling mage and then they hit you with the 3 lightning bolts, say beholden, and you lose the game because you named the wrong card. And I think that Talion's going to be like that if it does end up getting played. I think so far, like I said, for my money, I really like the card. I think it's a good card, but only in Commander or Modern or something like that. Maybe I don't really think it's going to get played in Modern, but I'm just using that example where I think that those decks have more. Like I play this against Burn, and their whole I just named 3, and most of their burn spells nowadays cost 3, or I named 2. Okay, a lot of their cards cost 2. All their creatures have at least 2 power, 2 toughness. So no matter what, I'm going to get
Yeah.
something out of it. Whereas standard, like the only deck you're really going to do that to is like mono red maybe, and then other than that, like what are you going to do against Demir? Maybe you can name 3, but then you tap out, they just kill it, and then they just move on with their life. It doesn't have ward, it doesn't have
Or you just
any protection.
You
Like,
just
it's
name 2 because you know a go for the throat's coming, so you might as well draw 1.
yeah, and at the point it's like
Yeah.
I don't like that. Like I said, once again, if I'm going to be playing a 4-drop, I'm playing Shieldred.
Perfectly
And I think
fair.
that most of the fairy decks probably are going to be like that, where they just play cheaper stuff. They play the Thoughtseize, the Spell Stutter, and then they play like Shieldred. And there's going to be a new card somewhere that they're going to be playing that draws them cards. And I think it's going to be the Divination at instant speed. I think that the Divination at instant speed is a card that is not being given its respect. I think that this card is going to give control decks something to do on turn 3 when they're not able to counter a spell. I think this card is going to be huge in the fairy deck when maybe they don't have a turn 3 play, and then finally they can untap their 1-drop, the Curse Fairy, whatever it's called. And I legitimately think this card is going to get played a lot. I think people are underestimating the power of 3 mana draw 2 in standard. And I think that this is an effect that, in all honesty, Control's been missing for a long time, because they keep being given a 4 mana, draw spell. And now the control deck can go sleight of hand or consider, and then we can follow that up with like a 2 mana counter spell, quick study to redraw, then you board wipe, and then you go to turn 5, then you start to build. You play a couple deluges in your deck, so maybe you hit a deluge, you're able to flash it back. And meanwhile, you're still filtering so many cards, right? Like the main reason where Control was at its best recently was Alrund's Epiphany. And it wasn't because Alrund's Epiphany was a bomb card. It was because Expressive Iteration made that deck consistent. Without Expressive Iteration, that deck's nothing. And I honestly think that this is where we're going to end up being with cards like Quick Study, some more draw spells maybe down the line. Could be added, like I said, Consider, Sleight of Hand can make a comeback as well, where the control decks and some of these maybe mid-rangey blue decks that are like Control are able to filter through so many cards that they're able to hit the answer, hit the card they need at the right time, like usual. Because, like I said, I really think that's what Control's been missing. Sometimes it's just board wipe or bust, and I think having that turn 3 draw 2 kind of dig deeper to not miss land drops and hit that answer, I think is going to be big. And you can also play this in the fairy deck as like a 2-of. Why not? It's instant speed.
Sure.
Do y'all remember when you used to be able to play Think Twice in Modern?
Those were the days, man. It's funny. So, Pizza, you're presenting a really good. You're selling me pretty hard on this card, because I got to be honest, I wrote it off out of hand because I thought the dialogue around this one was genuinely silly. Because I saw a bunch of people go to Twitter going, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe they made divination so obsolete." Meanwhile, I'm over here being like, when was the last time any of you resolved a divination?
Just because it's sorcery speed, though. When a card
totally
has
like,
instant speed, a card is like completely different.
completely
the Wandering
different.
Emperor is like the best
100%.
example of that.
100% agree. That the upgrade is incredibly significant. It absolutely is, and it makes it so that it's in the conversation. Like divination is just out of the conversation nowadays. It's like I have to tap out on turn 3 to draw 2 cards. No, thank you. And,
wait. The correct answer to your question, Ham, is when did someone last cast a divination on 3 mana? That answer is their Magic 2013 booster draft.
Yeah, the math on that checks out. Yeah,
Look, to give you an idea of how powerful this card is, Archmage's Charm exists in Modern, and the only reason, 80% of the reason people play Archmage Charm is to draw 2 cards. So if a card that costs 3 blue mana gets played in a format like Modern, because some days you just want to draw 2 cards. Don't get me wrong, obviously Counterspell and taking the army token nowadays or whatever is like huge, but just so you can just draw 2 additional cards, Ham. Just think about that.
Fair. And we're comparing a Modern Horizons rare to a standard set common.
Yeah.
So it's not as like this isn't a fair because you could also make the same comparison with Broker's Ascendancy, which has an instant speed divination mode on it, but it's across 3 separate colors, and that deck there isn't a banned deck in standard right now. So you can make a similar argument between that's comparison. Archmage's Charm, the other 2 modes on it are massive.
Yeah, they're pretty
heaters.
busted. Yeah.
So like yes, but even then, if you were to take any single one of those modes in a vacuum, that card probably doesn't see play in Standard or in Modern, at all. Like counter spell for 3 mana, cancel. That doesn't see any play. Target player draws 2 cards instant beatable. Quick study, we have that now, but honestly, I don't anticipate quick study is going to be Modern playable. I think they just have
I think though Standard it's going to be huge. I expect to see that
that's not what we're
card a
saying
lot.
here, but I'm just like we're drawing the comparison. Archmage's Charm, the fact that draw 2 is the floor. Like the worst case scenario, you got a quick study here. And it's like, well, and you're not mad at that, in a lot of situations. So, all right, cool. And best case scenario, you got a counterspell that can hit the bomb that they were going to use to combo kill you. Like, that's fantastic.
Or you take a shark token, or you take one of their treasures so they can't go off with Indomitable Creativity.
Also true. Yeah, or the Goblin Shaman they made off Fable or whatever the case may be. Yeah, a lot of good stuff.
I really think a quick study fills right into the curve where you want to be with a lot of decks, and
that's fair.
I think this is one of the best commons, if not the best common, maybe in the set.
Oh, Hollywood, your mic just cut out. It's not out completely, but you're very quiet.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why it keeps going out like that. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Thing going on? No worries.
Yeah, but I think that this is like the best common in the set. Honestly, I think it's up there for sure.
Okay. I can't come up with a rebuttal right out the top of my head.
I'm turning you into a believer.
Frenzy is uncommon, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm turning you into a believer. Believe in these blue cards.
It's funny. It's funny because when my public take on this card that I posted to Twitter is, oh my goodness, I am so glad they made an instant speed divination so I can continue ignoring it. That was, I'm proud of that joke for the record, even though fair enough.
You'll be talking about it on coverage. You'll be like, oh, there's quick study again.
Honestly, you know what? In the upcoming Pizza Box, I'm hoping to see this. Like I hope I'm wrong on this. I hope like the new, the Esper control decks are all absolutely out there all over the place. Some people are rocking pure Azorius as well. I've definitely seen that, because we have Sunfall and a really good counter package right now in Standard. So, those decks are 100% a thing. And so this all of a sudden sliding in as a 2 of, in those decks. Okay, like I can see that absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see. And honestly, I'm more than happy to eat my words on this one. I already have, clearly my analysis on blue in this set has not been fantastic. So that's okay. I'm okay with this.
It's okay. It's always the new set. It's hard to know what's actually going to get played until we see it.
It's impossible to get them all right. Yeah.
But I did name Bankbuster and Rafine though, so I can.
I mean, that's true.
I can sit back and just chill and be like, okay, are these the next Rafines? Like, are these the next, bomb cards to blow up Standard? Like I wanted to though. I want all these cards to be good. I 100%. Want this set to look at rotation, to look at the non-rotation and laugh and be like, haha, or Eldraine's powerful enough to hang, and I really think it is. I think every card in the set is reminiscent of the old Eldraine where it's a powerful card, and I definitely expect to see it. And we're definitely gonna get a taste, right? In the Arena Open that's coming up.
Well, we have an Arena Open
as well
coming up next weekend. It is Wilds of Eldraine sealed. So we're going to see what the best players come up with as far as what they believe the value is when it comes to the sealed format with Wilds of Eldraine, which I honestly, I've played a fair amount of Wilds of Eldraine Draft, and I played a little bit of Sealed on Arena since it came out, and I have to say, the format is a blast. The amount of, goofy build-arounds that are genuinely viable when you add role tokens to the mix, and when you add, I found there are a handful of rares that can absolutely take over a game, which is really unfortunate. I was doing a draft pool during the early access, and somebody dropped an Ashiok on me. It's like, all right, cool. And I had a really good board state up until that point. It was just like, oh, I'll see myself out. All right, cool. That kind of stuff happens. But in general, I'm really impressed at the synergies. And there are a couple of commons and uncommons in this set that if you get them in your sealed pool, seriously consider building around them because they can really get some work done. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had plenty of experience playing in multiple pre-releases during pre-release week. Granted, you were allowed to play with your pre-release promo, but aside from that, I think this was another interesting set to sort of play back to back to March Machines Limited, where your entire strategy could revolve around what your bomb enchanted tails are, And I think that's saying a lot because the Multiverse Legends and March of the Machines Limited, you could just draft them and your draft is set. You could play with as many of those in sealed as you wanted and you'd be set. There was even a Legends, right, sort of like deck build around the Multiverse Legends and March of Machines. I don't want to say that the feeling is 100% similar with Wilds of Eldraine. I think it's more prevalent in draft than it is sealed. So the Arena Open is sealed. But there are definitely very powerful Enchanted Tales that can make or break your sealed pool. Whether that's you ripping a Bitter Blossom or ripping like in a Natural Growth with the majority green deck. I mean, that's ability to trigger every combat is a little out of control. You could even get lucky and draft and pull a Fiery Emancipation and triple all your damage on turn.
You get like 2 Impact Tremors and just aggro somebody out, right? Like
Impact Tremors is fantastic.
I opened a sealed pool once with Impact Tremors and Song of Totentons. It was just like,
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. Yeah. It was awesome.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So I like it because it keeps it fun in terms of sealed. But I always caution, like around a set like this, like how is the limited format impacted by non-standard legal cards in this draft format to where it's like a mini cube within the standard set. And that was my criticism of March of the Machine. And I loved sealing or drafting March of the Machines because it was a blast to play. And I think this is too. But in terms of like best synergies coming out of this set, I think Green-Black has the most synergetic combination between food tokens playing like the Gumdrop creature on turn. That's a 3/2 that like gives a creature -X, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. You just sack a food, which it also makes on turn 1. Game 3, slam this creature down and give a creature -3/3. So it's a sweet removal spell on a stick. And let's talk about an amazing green card uncommon in Up the Beanstalk, which HollywoodPizza.
That card's definitely constructed playable. Yeah, that card is broken.
2 mana,
like, this card is
draw
nuts.
card, cast a bomb, draw some more cards.
This is the best uncommon in the set, by the way.
Yeah,
Easy.
I think it's fair to say. In limited, like if I'm opening Up the Beanstalk in my sealed pool, I'm gonna be very like careful about what deck I put it in. If it's not supported, I probably won't go for it. There's at least one other uncommon I would prioritize ahead of it. But as far as constructed playability concerns, oh yeah, no question. This is
card's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm loving the set. I mean, I'm gonna give the Arena Open probably a take or two, like I do with most of them, just to see how we do. So I'm hoping to open some synergy.
I love it.
Yep,
so there is
100%.
one uncommon that has been an absolute banger for me in all of my drafts, and that's Hearth Elemental. This thing is insane.
This card is insane. Yep.
And it lines up so well in everything. If you open this in your sealed pool, seriously look at the red support to see if you can make it happen. Because this card has single-handedly won me more games of draft than any other card. So, yeah, Stoke
This card was
Genius
nuts
is
in my adventure deck, man, for early access. This card's awesome.
100%. So yeah, so the sorcery on it is 1 and a red, discard your hand, then draw 2 cards. So it has the downside of having to discard your hand, but if your hand's empty, who cares? Or if there's only like 1 card in it, like a land or something that you can't play, so whatever, just get it out of there and find something you can. And then it's a 4/5 for 5 into red, but it costs X less to cast, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard that are instants, sorceries, or have an adventure. And so in a lot of situations, if you're doing like an Is It Spellslinger kind of thing or I don't know, just about any, deck with adventures and spells in it, a lot of the time, the Hearth Elemental ends up costing you 3 for a 4/5 or less, potentially. I have paid 1 for this. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen. And in limited, you're just rocking out a 4/5 for 1 that just refills your hand? Like, that's not fair. This thing is nuts. Yeah, and on top of that, if you have instants, sorceries, or adventures in your hand, Stoke Genius can get them in your graveyard and reduce the cost of the elemental. It's like this card is a bomb.
It's great.
Like Yeah, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. I just can't sing the praises of this card highly enough. Especially in draft. But even then, if you're playing adventures in standard, you know, and you already have red in there, it's probably worth it.
Yeah. And you know, another shameless plug to put in here in case you're interested in checking out some Wilds of Eldraine Limited. Every week, fellow MagicJank team member Isaiah MTG does run Peeps and Keeps, which is a draft club. And every time a new set comes out, at least for the next like 5 or 6 weeks, they're drafting this set. So if you want to check that out, that happens on Monday. There will be one coming up this Monday at 8:30 p.m. Double draft pod. I'll be in one of those pods.
Awesome.
But yeah, if you want to check that out, some new Wilds of Eldraine Limited, that's the place to be.
And I'll be sure to put Isaiah's link in the description of this episode so you can, you know, make it nice and easy for you to check that out. Because, yeah, those are good time. Absolutely. Oh, my goodness. But, yeah, so this is fantastic. Yeah, Wilds of Eldraine is, honestly, it's doing everything that I wanted to see. It's shaking up Standard at least a little, which was a monumental task this year. And it's and we're just getting started. Who knows what's going to happen in the coming weeks. And limited environment is just nothing short of fantastic. I also love how so many really bad enchantments from the past step in and actually become pretty decent in this limited environment. Like there's Hatching Plans, for example, which is a terrible card that came out like 15 years ago. And in this environment, like it reads like it was made with bargain in mind. And here, I'm not even gonna pull up the old artwork for it. So this is a rare from Dissension. One in a blue. When Hatching Plans is put into your graveyard, into the graveyard from play, is the old wording, draw 3 cards. So it's Ancestral Recall, but you have to somehow sacrifice an enchantment. Back in the OG Ravnica block, that wasn't a thing.
Nope.
So I was like, I'm gonna put this down, hoping my opponent spends a card, disenchants it, and draws me 3 cards. Like, what?
It's the card when you opened up a pack of Dissension and it was your rare in the pack, you were just sad facing everybody.
I suspect the fates for a lot of these cards were ripped in half in an LGS's trash can. Like this is like it's one of these. Yeah, but in this limited environment, it's fantastic because we have bargain. So it's a 2-drop. You just throw out. You then bargain it away the following turn. You get a kicker on your spell, and you draw 3 cards.
Yep.
Get out of here. That's nuts. So yeah, I love it. And the other one that I've used to really good effect is Stab Wound. Like this card for 3 mana.
This card used to be so annoying and limited.
Yeah, like guess what? It still is. It's so it's basically just a really bad deadweight. But like
I think it's a really good deadweight.
It ends up playing a lot better than it reads. Because I remember looking at this being like, why would I play this? And I did a draft, and it was like pick 4 or 5, and this came along. And I think I had like at least one other black card. So somebody in chat was like, you need to pick up Stab Wound. Just trust me on this.
Yeah.
Like, all right, and sure enough, there were a couple of times where I dropped it. Yeah, I dropped it on like 3 toughness creatures. Like if you can drop this onto a 3/3 or like the dream is like a 2/3. It's like it survives. It's kind of useless on the board, and it just domes them for 2 life every turn. Like it's nasty. Absolutely
a lot of stuff in Eldraine has big butts. So you know, Stab Wound fits in quite perfect there.
Yeah, it's delightful. So I gotta say, things like this, a lot of these cards play way better than you might think in this environment. Honestly, the Enchanted Tales, it's kind of wild that they're all reprints. Like they feel like they were made for it. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of things to be excited about this set, especially like all the new arts in the set, right? Like I know people have been getting really, really hype about like all the anime arts that are in the set, and I think that this special sheet is kind of like revitalized the interest in alternate cards, where we kind of got dumped so many variants in the last like 3 standard sets, where this set's taking a little bit lighter, and it shows that we're actually able to appreciate things when they get hit on us in a slower, more meaningful way, right, Ham?
Absolutely. Well, and when it comes to, the anime art styles are absolutely fantastic. And that actually does kind of dovetail into another topic that I wanted to touch on briefly today. This past week, a trailer dropped on the official Magic YouTube channel for Wilds of Eldraine. I'm assuming it wasn't intended for the American audience necessarily because it was in Japanese, and the art style, it was done fully in anime. And it's almost 3 minutes long. And it basically just tells the tale of the set. And so you see Anime Will and Anime Rowan facing off, and it's, and there's something about like the twins clashing in that art style in the rain with the, all the close-ups and the quick cuts that you like associate with anime. For some reason, it just totally works. And I love the fact that Wizards is embracing this style and embracing that. Honestly, that culture. I think there's a lot of crossover between people who enjoy that art style and that presentation, that aesthetic, and Magic the Gathering. So give the people what they want, like put them together. And I'm just gonna add my voice to a large group of creators and just say, Wizards, if like we've talked about the Netflix show, there's been talk about like making a movie or whatever over the years. You have anime studios who are producing these trailers for you. They're fantastic. Get them to do a feature-length something, whether that's a movie, whether that's a TV show with Magic characters in the Magic universe. You will make all of the money. Just like market body pillows or whatever. I don't know how that works, but like,
all they need to do is just make cards with the thing. It's built in already. They already have their product.
Yeah, pretty much.
Lord of the Rings proved it. They already have their product. All they have to do is slap
fair.
whatever they want on it, and then everyone's going to buy the cards if they make them good, if they're powerful, if people want to play with them in Commander and tournaments, so on and so forth.
I tell you, that little anime trailer is what I wanted when they released Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Like, instead of doing that, they had done the manga, don't get me wrong, but the video like they released was like that music video. Yeah. And I was just wishing it was more of actually like the anime animations and storytelling rather than the music video that was there. So I'm glad that they sort of corrected that this time with this introduction.
That's fair. I feel like that music video was excellent. I just wanted it to end with the full story will be available on Hulu on October or whatever. Like, that's what I wanted that so badly.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Or Netflix or wherever. I don't care. Apple TV, whatever. Just make it happen. Make it real. Because give us the full thing. Anyway. Because that music video was fantastic and it left me wanting a lot more. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Can't agree more with you guys.
Right? It'd just be fun. Anyway. But yeah, so with that, actually, that covers most of what we want to talk about. One moment though, looking at it, it is currently, as of this recording, it is early to mid-September. And as a result, in about 2 weeks, the three of us, along with a number of other members of Team MagicJank, will be boarding various planes or trains or automobiles from around these beautiful United States. And we will be venturing, actually, and Canada. We have a couple Canadian folks coming in as well. And we are going to be converging on the city of Las Vegas for MagicCon Las Vegas. We've been talking about it a lot. We are incredibly hyped. Cannot wait. So we are going to be there as Team MagicJank. I know I'm going to be bringing my jersey. Actually, you're going to be seeing me in the bright yellow and blue, as I'm sure we all are going to be rocking. And through some very impressive, negotiations and conversations, our team was actually successful, and I'm glad, Carlo, thank you for making this possible. We actually do have a meet and greet time scheduled on Sunday, so keep an eye out in the official creator area. Team MagicJank will be there, so come find us. Let's get some games in. I know I'm gonna, even if you don't have a commander deck, I've got plenty. I'm happy to let you borrow one.
Yep.
Let's make it happen.
And so I know I'm leaving in 10 days because I'm going a couple days early. To experience some Vegas with some friends before MagicCon, but also to meet up with some viewers and stuff. So it's going to be a fun time. But at MagicCon Vegas, there is going to be plenty of ways for y'all to interact with us from Team MagicJank, not just asking us for games to play, but some of us are also going to be featured in certain zones throughout MagicCon. On Friday, I believe, of MagicCon, you can find me in the signing area on Friday from 1 to 2. And then you can catch me in the arena stage from 2 to 3. Oh, I'm sorry, from 3 to 4, right after Power Dragon. And then
Nice.
all of us will be in the creator zone on Sunday. You'll be able to catch Damien F16 and Headology Magic in the arena zone bright and early Sunday morning, starting at like 10:30. And then you can catch all of Team MagicJank in the creator reserve table area from 2:30 all the way to 5:30. So for 3 hours. And we'll be right next to the filthy MTG casuals too. So
nice.
Our friends over there. I'll have a box of Wilds of Eldraine for us to draft. So if you want to come draft with Team MagicJank, make sure to come check us out. We'll have tons of stuff that we'll be able to give away. If you find me, and for those of you who are watching on the tubes, I've got some tokens that I'm ready to give out. So if you need a food token for your Eldraine draft or your commander deck, come and get me. And I also got these cool little stickers of some emotes from my channel that you'll be able to get from me. So make sure you find me and find the rest of MagicJank somewhere at MagicCon Las Vegas.
I love it. Yeah, and I'll definitely have some MagicJank stickers, and as well, I also got some Hammox 42 stickers. They ended up being very small, so I'm just going to make them confetti. So come find them. Yeah, it's very exciting.
I will also have plenty of swag and some cards to give away, so that was my cat there. But I'll definitely have some stuff to give away, so definitely get in on that. I'm really excited to be going to Vegas with the team and get to see everybody we know.
Yeah, it's going to be a big old party. Let's celebrate this game that we love with each other. It's all about the gathering, right? Let's make it happen. So, yeah, hopefully we'll see you out there. If you can't make it, it's all good. Hopefully we can catch you at the next event, whatever that may be. So
you might see us live streaming from MagicCon Las Vegas.
There's a non-zero chance of that. Yeah. Not to mention, you can also expect to see some coverage from the event, and I know I'm planning on taking quite a bit of footage. So in the weeks following the event, keep an eye on the MagicJank YouTube channel for some coverage and perhaps some interviews with some people. So that is a and maybe even some gameplay if I can figure out how to like record a game live with. Anyway, we'll figure it out.
I'll be bringing the laptop and some other stuff, maybe even an internet pack with me. Ooh. So we're going to be able to stream hopefully live and do the podcast like a whole 3-day show.
We're gonna be doing some stuff. Keep an eye out.
Oh yeah,
yeah, definitely be on the lookout for that.
We'll figure out the logistics, but we're gonna be making some content, believe it or not. Yeah. Anyway, super cool. So yes, with that, let's go ahead and take it in for a landing. If you, dear viewers, dear listeners, want to get in touch with us, there are many ways to do so. We are all out on the various things, the Twitters and our Twitch channels. The links for all of those are in the description. One of the best ways to get in touch with this podcast specifically, we do have a podcast questions channel on the MagicJank Discord server. Don't hesitate to jump in there. We do keep an eye on that before every episode. So if there are any questions that you have for us or any topics that you would like us to discuss on this very show, don't hesitate to hop in there and go ahead and say some stuff, or hop out onto Twitter, or X as the kids are calling it these days. And you can actually type out a question, tag at MagicJank with the hashtag JankMail, and we will see that, and we will definitely incorporate it into the show. So thank you so much. And gentlemen, are there any parting thoughts? Anything you'd like to say to the good folks before we go ahead and pack it in for the day?
Just over this next week, if you have the chance to, grab some friends and play a game of Magic.
Heck yes.
That's right.
That's what it's all about, baby. All right. We'll take it easy, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next one. Later.